Jesus said to lay hands on the children who come to him to bless them. But what happens when them hands get a little too friendly?
You are now listening to The Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast hosted by Kay on Spotify. A podcast aimed to uncover and share the stories behind heinous and insane acts that have been overlooked or overshadowed by mainstream media, getting justice for the voices that can't speak.
What's up, y'all? It's your girl Kay, and I am the host of The Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast. A podcast designed to focus on crimes committed in the Black community that you don't hear about in mainstream media, giving a voice to those victims that have otherwise been silenced. Y'all ever hear a story that is just so twisted that you almost don't believe it? That's how I felt when I was researching this case. Like, so many times we hear about hypocrisy in the church and how people are saying, they don't want to go to church and worship because of folks being sneaky and shady and just, taking advantage of people. And Ray Charles could see that in this case. This case kind of, well, I shouldn't say kind of, but it definitely gives the church a bad name. And, I myself have been in situations where I stopped going to church for a while because the people that I look to as leaders and the people that were supposed to be there to guide and help and give you that Christian, guidance were the ones that were doing the sneaky underhanded shit. They were the ones that were, hitting on folks in the church and sleeping with several members and just, hypocrisy at its finest. So when I was researching this case, I definitely could understand it. Now, of course, now I have a wonderful church home and I don't have those problems, but I could see the more and more that I researched this case, the hypocrisy. Like, this shit here is like, I really feel like God is just sitting up there in heaven looking down like, why? Just why? This week's infamous case involves Aniya Mack, the victim, Donovan Lewis, the murderer, Pastor Strickjavar Strickland, dead ass, that's his name, y'all. Strickjavar Strickland, Aniya's, I guess you could say, boss and mentor, and the good pastor's wife, Jasmonique Strickland. Born on February 8, 1994, to Loretta Rankin Bailey and Anthony Mack, Aniya Monea Mack had the world wrapped around her finger. Aniya was pretty much the girl next door. She had a sparkling personality that just made everyone love her. She attended Muskegon Heights High School, where she was involved in pretty much everything that you could think of. She was in the National Honor Society, varsity cheerleading squad, senior class secretary, varsity volleyball and softball, and she was in the marching band where she was captain of the Majorettes. Oh, I wanted to be a majorette so bad, but when I say I was such a nerd, I couldn't even make the flag team, y'all. I was in the band and I played saxophone and percussion, but like, choir was really my thing because I love singing. Child, I was too scared to, go out for majorettes and cheerleading and all of that because I just knew I was going to get made fun of. Like that, and I was kind of, I guess you could say slightly rhythmically challenged. Anywho, so Aniya came from a really big family. Between her parents, she had six sisters: Ashley Mack, Keandria Mack, Autumn Lambert, Jaleesa Hollins, Jennifer Hollins, and Kaya Bailey. Now, she also had six brothers: Marcus Robertson, Edward Donson II, Anthony Mack Jr., Justin Means, Joe Bailey, and Jeremy Hollins. Ooh, Jesus, be some birth control. My uterus just jumped out the window. God damn. Anaya was big on family. I mean, with that many brothers and sisters, you kind of had to be. But, she was an all around great student. She made good grades. She had extracurricular activities, obviously. She accepted Christ at an early age at Greater Harvest Baptist Church under the leadership of Pastor Charles Hidreth Sr., and she later joined the Antioch Baptist Church under his leadership. She loved dancing, singing, doing hair and makeup, rightfully so, because if you saw pictures of her, homegirl was stepping all the way out, stepping on these heifers' necks, okay? Every picture I saw of Anaya, she was posed like all the way together. Outfits put together, hair laid, face beat, all of that. The girl was gorgeous. So, it's no wonder that she was the diva of her family and friends. She was a beautiful, sweet, loving young woman who brightened every room that she entered. Boys were never really a problem for Anaya. She's gorgeous, she's got this little petite frame, but her main focus was the books. She graduated high school in 2012, where she was listed as one of the top 10 graduates in a graduating class of 68. Damn, 68? Like, I think my high school had like maybe 250 graduates, so I'm wondering how big the high school was. Anyway, she enrolled at Western Michigan University, where she majored in psychology. Now, she continued her love of dance with the Jador dance team, and with her majoring in psychology, she was holding down a 3.8 GPA. She wanted to help individuals that had mental or physical disparities lead healthy lives. That is amazing because not too many people get into that field. When you're having to work with individuals that have mental or physical disparities, it can be challenging. So, for a 24-year-old girl to say, okay, this is what I want to do, that is amazing to me. Now, while she's in school, Anaya was also very involved in church. One of her closest friends, Jerron White, said that she would always say, "You better get right with God." I know that's right. Folks better know, okay? My grandmama used to always tell me that. She'd be like, "Baby, you better get right with God or get left here on this earth." And I still take that to this day. Like, I can hear my grandmother in my head. But, Anaya was really involved in the church. She attended Second Baptist Church under the leadership of Pastor Javar Strickland. Oh, okay, Black people, I know we can be creative with names, and in no way am I saying don't name your baby something unique. But Javar Strickland, whoo child, that's a name you can't forget. Good Lord. Anyway, back to the case. Okay. So, like I said, Anaya is very involved in the church. She's attending Second Baptist Church, which is one of, if not the first biggest African American church in the community. Like, it is like an historical landmark. Okay. She's in the church choir, and every time there's an opportunity for something, Anaya is like, "How can I help? I'm on it." She had a very caring heart, and that's what led her to Donovan Lewis. Donovan Terrell Lewis was born October 10th, 1992. He attended Kalamazoo Valley Community College, where he was one of the star basketball players. He had goals and ambitions that he wanted to accomplish. He was really smooth, and Anaya was attracted to that. So the two of them met in church in the spring of 2017 during her junior year of college. Now, Donovan is a year older than Anaya, so it's not like, there was like this big, huge age difference between the two of them. They really clicked, they really hit it off, like, most couples do. They took trips together, went to church together. They really motivated each other to just be great. And Anaya really saw the good in him. Now, they had issues like other couples, but it wasn't until the summer of 2018 that those issues really started to surface. See, Donovan had gotten his associates from Kalamazoo Valley Community College, and he had gotten a job as a youth basketball coach at the YMCA. Now, Anaya, she's still in school. She's in her senior year at Western Michigan University, and she had gotten her dream job working with autistic children. I love that so much. As a mom of children on the spectrum, I love to see when individuals, especially people of color, want to get into a field like that, because I am seeing more and more children of color that are on the spectrum, And it's just amazing to see, so many people now interested in a field like that. Now, Anaya was still very much active in the church despite, her job and Donovan and, her school and the dance team. She was still active. Like I said, she was in the choir, and anything that the church needed, she was there. She was the first one to volunteer, like, hey, okay, how can I help? So much so that Donovan kind of started noticing things. So the pastor is like a mentor to Anaya. And this particular mentor would help Anaya out. For example, he gave her a car to drive. Anaya didn't have a car. So good pastor said, you know what? I'm going to help you out. He gives her a Chevy Malibu to drive. And Donovan is like, okay, that's a little strange, but all right, whatever. I ain't going to trip. But it was one particular evening that Donovan was at Aniya's house and he finds out some more information. So not only had Pastor Strick Javar given her the Chevy Malibu to drive, but he had also given her money to pay her rents. Like, wait a minute, not that you out here paying that rent, Pastor. So Donovan is seeing this and he's like, yo, what the fuck? Why is this nigga paying your bills? And Anaya's just like, listen, don't trip. It's nothing to it. And then on top of that, Donovan finds out that the trip that Anaya told him that she was going on, a trip with the choir to the pastor's good old hometown in Mississippi, the choir didn't go, but Anaya did, and the pastor did. So it's confirmed later on in the case, but of course, Donovan is like, what the fuck? How you go off on a trip with the pastor and the choir don't go? So he's bugging the hell out. He's like, okay, you getting money from the pastor to pay your rent. He done giving you a car to drive. Like, this is some crazy shit from the outside looking in. But it wasn't until Donovan sees a text message in Anaya's phone from good old pastor that everything just went left. So, you know what they say, when you go looking for something, you going to find it. And that's exactly what happened. So Donovan is at her house on June 16th of 2018, and he's going through her phone. And he sees a text message from Pastor Strickland that says, I'm going to give you the best dick you ever had. What? Not that the good pastor out here trying to lay hands and give her that staff, child. Pastor was on that good old.
Swallowed up. Have you ever been swallowed up? Have you gone through a time of swallowing?
I'm sorry, y'all. I had to do it. That clip took me out. Like, I have never laughed so hard in my life. This dude literally talking about some, have you ever been swallowed up? He, like, what the hell was he thinking? Bruh, okay. Whew, I'm sorry, y'all. All right, I gotta be serious. Okay. So Donovan sees the message and, he's on Anaya, but she assures him nothing happened between her and the pastor. So a week later, on June 24th of 2018, Donovan is back at her house. And the two of them, they've been drinking, they feeling good. And maybe it was the alcohol in his system, I don't know, but he was on some other shit. He's still pissed off. He keeps thinking about these text messages and he's just like, yo, what the fuck is this nigga texting you this stuff for? Like, why? And Anaya, she's trying to calm him down. He's just like, nah, this nigga talking about he gonna give you the best dick you ever had. What's that about? But she keeps telling him, babe, nothing happened. There's nothing going on. I already told you that. I'm not messing with him. But Donovan, he's just enraged. He's not trying to hear it. He gets so mad that he hits her and he knocks her unconscious. And Anaya, she falls to the ground and Donovan just blanks. He goes to the kitchen and he grabs a knife and he slits her throat while she's unconscious. She never even had a chance to fight, y'all. He slits her throat, and because of her size and her height, she's actually small enough to fit inside of a suitcase. So he stuffs her in the suitcase to get rid of her. Meanwhile, her mother, Loretta, she's back in Louisiana and she's worried. She and Anaya talk all the time. So to go more than 2 days without talking to her it's a bit odd. Now, see, this is the mistake that so many people make. If a person is known to talk to family members all the time, you got to be careful with that if you out here, committing crimes and stuff, because let a couple of days go by and my people don't hear from me. Oh, best believe it's going to be a search party and they going to know exactly who to turn to the police for. Okay? Like the manhunt going to be on. I tell people all the time, get you a in case something happens to me folder, because best believe something happened to me, oh, they gonna know who to go after. So, Loretta hasn't seen Anaya in a year. The last time she saw her daughter, Anaya had actually driven 16 hours from Michigan to Louisiana, and that was in June of 2017 on her mom's birthday. She had bought her tickets for them to go to this festival, and they had had a blast. And Loretta just unfortunately wasn't expecting a year later for her daughter to go missing. She hadn't heard from her and she was really starting to worry. She's calling Anaya and she's leaving voicemails. Baby, where you at? Why aren't you answering? Call me back. Then she gets a phone call from Jerron, Anaya's friend, and he's like, "Hey, have you heard from Anaya?" And her mom is like, "Nah, I've been trying to call her, but she's not answering." And Jerron, he's telling her, "Well, that's weird because she hasn't been at work the last few days, and I know she was really excited about her job." So this was all Loretta needed to hear. She hangs up with Jerron and she calls Donovan. And she's like, "Hey, Donovan, good to talk to you. Have you heard from Anaya?" And Donovan's like, "Nah, I ain't talked to her since Sunday. You may want to call Pastor Strickland because she was supposed to be meeting him at the church to help him with some stuff." So Loretta hangs up with Donovan and she's like, "Okay, all right." She calls Pastor and she says, "Hey, I know you don't know me, but I'm Anaya's mom. And I was just wondering, have you talked to her? Do you know where she's at?" And Pastor Strickland, he's like, "No, sister, I ain't heard from her, but don't worry, I'll spread the word and we gonna pray that she's found safe." But that wasn't good enough for Loretta. She called the Kalamazoo police and told them the situation. So she asked them to do a welfare check and she let it be known that, it had already been a few days since she had heard from Anaya and nobody has heard from her since. So Anaya's mom files a missing persons report, and on June 26th, 2018, the police go to Anaya's apartment to perform a welfare check. They get there and they knock, but no one answers. So they ended up going to find the superintendent of the building, and he opens her apartment. They walk in, and at first, everything seems normal. Nothing's really out of place. They see some empty alcohol bottles in the living room and in her bedroom, but they don't think too much of it because, after all, Anaya is a college student. So, yeah, it's not like it's going to be super clean, and they're going to expect to see stuff like that. It's not until they start looking a little bit more that the police notice blood on the walls, like little itty bitty drops. Once they see that, they can't risk writing it off. So they call homicide, and when they get there, they notice that there are more blood stains not only on the wall, but on the floor. And it looks like someone tried to clean it up. So crime scene comes out and they actually cut the carpet where the blood was found and send it in for testing. So now, they're looking around like, okay, something is definitely up. We need to find out what it is. The police start asking her neighbors about Anaya, and they're all pretty much saying how pleasant and sweet she was. They mention how, Donovan was her boyfriend. So, of course, the police bring him in for initial questioning. When he comes into the precinct, he's very cooperative and he's answering their questions. And when they tell him that she's missing, he's just so distraught and upset. And he's like, oh my God, y'all got to find my baby. Y'all got to find my girl. Immediately, he starts telling them about Pastor Strickland. Okay, listen, y'all. I'm just gonna call him Strick because I'd be damned if I keep saying Strick Javard. That is I'm not. Nope. We just gonna call him Strick for the rest of this episode. Okay. Donovan tells the police about Aniya's relationship with Strick and how he was making advances towards her. He mentioned the text messages that he found in her phone from June 16th, and he shows them to the investigators, and he's like, look at what he's telling her. And they're like, well, damn, we definitely didn't see this coming. So, the pastor is a pillar in the community at the oldest black church. Like, the place is a landmark. So, they take the information that Donovan gave them and they're just like, all right, this man is a pastor. Is he really, guilty of what Donovan is saying he's guilty of? So they go and they locate the pastor and they bring him in. And when they find out that Strick had given Aniya a car to drive, they go and impound it. And sure enough, it's at Aniya's apartment complex. So they impound the car and they check the registration and it links back to Strick. So they bring him in and, they're asking him all these questions about him and Anaya. And I mean, they are firing off. They're like, you want to tell us about you and old girl? And, Strick is playing confused. He's like, well, what do you mean? I'm a happily married man. Really? That's not what we hear. We hear that you gave her a car. But, Strick got an answer. He's just like, no, I didn't give her a car. I was renting it out to her. And the cops are like, okay, well, what's up with you giving her money and paying her rent? But Strick wasn't sweating it. Nah, he's like, yeah, I gave her some money. I did on behalf of the church. You know how many people in the church we helped pay their rent? Of course, we wanted to help Anaya. She's one of our best members in the church. It's the least that we could do. And so then the cops are like, well, what about the trip? And Strick says, oh, yeah, the all expense paid trip was a choir trip with 50 other people. The trip was also all expenses paid for all college students. My family and my wife were with us. And the cops are like, damn, this dude got an answer for everything. He think he's slick. So then they hit him with the big question. They like, all right, you seem to have answers for everything. You want to explain why you were sending explicit text messages to your church member, to your parishioner, trying to give her the best dick she ever had, huh? What about that? And Strick is just appalled. He's just so shocked. What? Me? You have the wrong person. I would never do that. I didn't send her that message. People have access to my phone, so somebody probably sent that to her, but I swear it wasn't me. Then he continues telling on himself and mentions something that not even Donovan knew about. Strick had bought Anaya her cell phone and was paying the damn bill. Seems like Anaya was getting everything from this dude. She had her rent paid, a cell phone that she didn't have to pay the bill on, and a Chevy Malibu that Strick and his wife bought that was unregistered that she got to drive. So the investigators are side eyeing the hell out of Strick, but they don't have any solid proof that he had anything to do with Anaya's disappearance. Plus, he has an alibi. He was with his wife, Jasmine E. Now, that ain't really much of an alibi to me because, of course, your spouse gonna cover for your ass. But I mean, I guess go off. They let him go, but before he leaves, he asks them kind of a strange question. He's like, "Hey, y'all think I can get that car back that y'all took?" Clearly, he don't understand how investigations work because any evidence is going to be in police custody until the investigation is over. In most cases, until the trial is over. And, the cops are like, damn, that was insensitive. But, they shut him down and they tell him, like, hey, you're going to have to wait until everything is done. So he's like, okay, all right. Well, maybe y'all should look into her boyfriend, Donovan. Anaya had confided in me that they were having issues and he wasn't necessarily the nicest person. So he leaves, and investigators immediately check into his alibi. Of course, Jasminique says that he was with her and that they were spending time together. But the investigators want to check out these text messages that Donovan said Anaya was receiving. They don't have any proof of any type of, secret relationship between Anaya and the pastor. So they need something to help them because right now they're kind of at a standstill. So they get a subpoena for Anaya's phone records to check her text history. But before they can get those records, they get a phone call from one of Donovan's friends. In the early hours of June 28th, 2018, Donovan made a Facebook post and it said, I am so sorry for what I have done. I just hope all of you can forgive me. Hmm. That's when I start thinking,
No, you done fucked up, right? No, 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 no. You know you done fucked up, right?
so they see this and they knew dude was feeling guilty. Like he had taken the post down, but he didn't take it down quick enough. So the cops head on over to Donovan's grandmother's house where he was living. And when they get there, Donovan's waiting on him. And he's like, listen, just take me in. We'll talk about it on the way. And one of the cops is like, just tell me now, what did you do? And Donovan confesses. He's like, listen, I killed my girlfriend. So they cuff him and they put him in the squad car and bring him back down to the station. And on the way there, Donovan is telling him about why he killed Anaya and how he was pissed off about the relationship between her and Strigg. He told officials that, Anaya was blackmailing Strigg and that she had threatened to tell his wife about their affair if he didn't give her money, you know. And you know what? This kind of reminds me of that video that I just saw it on TikTok where this pregnant girl busted up in the church and she was like trying to fight the pastor's wife after she had exposed the pastor in the middle of Sunday service. She exposed the pastor for getting her pregnant and like dude was standing in the church like acting like he didn't do shit wrong. And I think the church ended up like voting him out or something. But girl was pregnant and then found out she wasn't the only one that he was, sleeping with. Like he was messing with his wife and like a whole bunch of people in the congregation. Now, in this situation, of course, there's no affair, but that was like the first thing that came to mind. Like Donovan is pissed off because he's like, yeah, Anaya went out and she did this trip with this dude and she took his car and she's taking money and she's blackmailing him and she's trying to make it seem like it's all chill and it ain't. So granted, Strick is wrong. Like he dead ass wrong for sending the messages. Ultimately, those messages are what cost Anaya her life. To me, I feel like anyway. So officials are like, all right, Donovan, listen, we need to know where you put her body. And he ends up taking them to Comstock Creek. Now he gets a little kind of confused at first because he can't remember exactly where he placed her, but after a while, he does end up remembering. And they get the team out there, they pull her from the water, and they find the suitcase that she was stuffed in. It's covered in mud, and ironically, the mud actually like preserved her body. Donovan Terrell Lewis was officially charged on June 29th, 2018 with open murder and placed in the Kalamazoo County Jail. Now, in the state of Michigan, open murder is a combination of first and second degree murder. And in that case, the jury can determine the appropriate degree based on the proofs. And what's really messed up is Anaya's mom found out that her daughter was dead on her birthday. Loretta's birthday was June 28th, and she found out on June 28th that her daughter was dead. Now, while awaiting trial, July 6th of 2018, Aniya's funeral is held at the Christ Temple Apostolic Pentecostal Assemblies of the World in Muskegon Heights, Michigan. Woo, that is quite a name there. I had to practice that a couple of times. She was only 24 years old. Her high school bandmates performed. One of her friends, Calvin Jackson, he told the reporters, all of this is for Anaya, her family, her friends, for everyone who loved her, everyone that she gave her inspiration to. This is all for them. Now, nobody at the funeral talked about how Anaya died because the type of girl that Anaya was, she didn't harp on negativity and they wanted to honor her memory. Now, while Donovan is awaiting trial, he decides that he's going to plead insanity. And Anaya's family is, burying her, but Strick is hot. Like, this dude is mad. The audacity of the police department to have his name out there in a negative way. You got my flock looking at me like I'm a heathen. You out here having me looking any old kind of way in these streets and accusing me of all these things. How dare you? This dude turns around and releases a statement. He done went and made this whole statement, and he's like, of all the things that I'm being accused of are ministry related. One, Second Baptist under my leadership has helped more than 30 families with transportation barriers. Anaya's situation was no different. Really? So you telling me that you gave Chevy Malibus to 30 families? Bruh, come on. You was trying to get the hot pocket. Quit playing. Anyway, okay, so he says, two, we've shared thousands of dollars of resources to help members with rent, utilities, food. Three, the all expenses paid trip was a choir trip with 50 other people. This trip was also all expenses paid for all college students, of which there were 6 to 8 more who all shared rooms together. My family, wife, and kids were with us. Lastly, this is an attempt to discredit the church, the NAACP, and the Black leader. However, I'm not running from this story. I'm rather trying to be sensitive to the source of your information, which is a young man that I don't know at all who has killed his ex girlfriend and is declaring himself insane. The family deserves peace, and my response to the propaganda will only disrupt their peace. Ultimately and finally, I have no control over people's dreams and feel that it is extremely unfair that I be held accountable for a person that thinks or imagines is happening. In this particular case, we have a young man who confessed to murder, and I'm sure that had I been a white leader here in Kalamazoo, that would be no story, especially based solely upon the word of a confessed killer and self proclaimed insane suspect. Did he really just say, oh, well, if I was white, this wouldn't be an issue? Dude, it's an investigation. Shut the fuck up. So he goes on to say, Aniya Mack's memory deserves to be left intact. Here is a young lady that has already lost her life and future, and now she is being degraded to nothing more than her pastor's mistress. That's the biggest injustice of all. Sir, your skeletons are about to come tumbling out the closet in a minute. Anyway, Donovan is awaiting trial in jail, and here's some crazy stuff that happens. On September 19th, 2018, a few months after being arrested and charged, Donovan is outside in the yard getting his rec time in. He's kicking a soccer ball, and suddenly he takes off towards the fence and he actually makes it. Homeboy scaled 2 fences surrounding the recreation yard, one that was topped with barbed wire and the other that had razor wire. This dude scaled both fences while the deputies were like 80 yards away. Then he scaled a third fence separating the jail from the business loop. Homeboy came out without a scratch. And of course, the family members and friends were notified that Donovan had escaped and he's on the run for like 33 minutes before he was caught in the area of South Burdick Street and West Maple. So a lot of people were baffled when Donovan was caught because how the hell did this man just walk out of a jail and nobody was able to catch him for 33 minutes? A lot of Anaya's friends and family, got the notice and they were scared because they thinking he's coming after them. When Donovan goes before the Honorable Judge Paul J. Bridenstine, Donovan tells the judge that his family had been receiving threats and he was worried about the well being of a friend who had been incapacitated. He later tells the judge, I was suicidal at the time and I didn't plan this. I didn't have any intention of running away from my problems. But some of the other inmates were like, yes, you did. Bruh definitely talked about escaping from jail. You know what? I'm noticing that a lot of these cases, it's a system that's supposed to be like this whole no snitching things, but these inmates be quick to roll on each other. Like the last 3 or 4 episodes, inmates just been snitching. Okay. Anyway, the murder trial was originally set for Tuesday, September 25th of 2018, but because of his little, escape, they had to do a mental exam to back up their whole insanity plea. So the trial got pushed back to October 25th, 2018, but another monkey wrench. Because of the fact that Donovan wanted to turn into Dora the Damn Explorer and ended up escaping, he had to go to trial for that first. So the murder trial got pushed from October of 2018 to the following year, October 28th of 2019. But he still had to go to trial for the escape. So that happened in January 2019. He goes before Judge Bridenstine and he gets sentenced to 17 months to 4 years. Now, he's serving his time for the escape, and I guess he decides to just own up to what he did, get it over with, let the whole insanity thing go. So his defense team, they go to the prosecution and they're like, listen, Donovan wants to take a plea deal. What can y'all do? And the prosecution, they're pretty certain that, they can get Donovan convicted if they go to trial because they got his confession and, everything lines up. But they still had to run it past Aniya's family. So they go to her mom, and her mom has since moved back to Michigan so that she could be close for the trial. And they're talking to her and they're telling her like, hey, he wants to take a plea deal. We don't think that he should, but what do you feel? And surprisingly, her mom is like, just go ahead, do it. They didn't want to go through the hassles of a trial because if they did, they knew that they would have to see that evidence and they would have to relive everything. And no mom wants to see pictures of her child's lifeless body in a suitcase or to hear how her boyfriend, the person that's supposed to love her unconditionally, slit her throat. So Donovan got lucky. And on September 27th, 2019, he pled guilty and was convicted of second-degree murder. At his sentencing, the Kalamazoo assistant prosecutor, attorney Michael Reisterser Jr., he spoke freely about Donovan's luck. Like he was like, listen, the Mack family got some great grace and strength, and the only reason that you're able to get a lesser charge is because of that family. Like basically, like, bruh, you better be thanking the fuck out this family because they saved your life. So, of course, like I said, they wanted to avoid the trial. Aniya's mom, she had written a letter that the prosecutor read in the courtroom. At the sentencing, it said, I can't come to court because I don't want to carry his face with me all the days of my life. I don't want to remember his facial expressions during the court proceedings, and I don't want to relive the murder. The day they found her bruised and battered body was my birthday. I'm not a person who seeks evil for evil, but I do want justice. She then says, I think I'm still in a nightmare and I'm gonna come out of it. Aniya got along with everybody. She was like the big light in the room. She was an angel. She was vibrant and she loved to help anyone in need. Donovan, he hears this and surprisingly, he's actually like remorseful. When it was his turn to speak at the sentencing, he tells the judge that, he's beyond sorry for what he did and he never meant to cause any hurt and pain to her family. He says, I know my words will never do justice. I pray first thing every day for her family. I want to say I'm sorry. Please. Niggas is always apologetic after they fuck up. They always want to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. You should have thought about that beforehand. Like, think about what you do. What you do can hurt somebody and fuck up everything. Like, you took this girl's life, you fucked up your life, you fucked up her parents, her family's life. You killed a beautiful and intelligent woman over an assumption. You killed her over something that was later found out to not even be true. Just because the pastor was out here living foul didn't mean that she was. Did she say that she was going to blackmail him? Possibly, but that don't mean that she was out there doing dirt with him. He was the sleaze. He was the one that was trifling, not her. And, Judge Breitenstein, he was pissed. He wanted Donovan to have a real sentence. He wanted him to get the maximum time that he could possibly have. But, he had to respect the agreement that the prosecution made. But he damn sure made sure that he let Donovan know how he felt. He, like, at one point he just spazzes on Donovan, and he's like, you had a lot of good things that you had developed over your life, and you threw all of that out the window on June 24th. Words don't do justice. Anaya didn't deserve any of this. She didn't deserve to be hit to begin with. She didn't deserve to be put unconscious. She didn't deserve to be stabbed and murdered, and her body didn't deserve to be treated less than garbage. All of that happened because you and nobody else. Justice demands that you be incarcerated for an extended period of time, and I suspect that there are a number of people in this courtroom and outside that don't even believe that what I'm going to impose is justice. That was my impression of the judge. Y'all know I got some problems, right? Anyway, Donovan Terrell Lewis was sentenced to 25 to 40 years in prison. Now, he did get credit for the 228 days that he had already spent in jail. He is currently at the Marquette Branch Prison, which is a level 4 security prison in Marquette, Michigan. The earliest that Donovan can be released is November 28th, 2044, if he serves the minimum. But if he does the maximum, he can be released June 28th, 2062. Jesus, that sounds like some, woo, that's far away. Like, that's some intergalactic time travel kind of time. Like, I can't even imagine what life will be like in 2062. God willing, I will still be living. I'll be like, what, 78, 79 years old. My kids will be grown and I'll probably be somebody's mama. But like, to think, like, damn, what's going to happen in 20? That's a long ass time. Now, remember that I said Strick had some things going on as well, right? Well, while Donovan is preparing for trial, Strick Javar Strickland, aka Strick, for the purposes of this episode, Big Strick, the pastor of Second Baptist Church and the president of the Metropolitan Kalamazoo branch of the NAACP, he's under investigation too. But it's what he's under investigation for that completely blew my mind. See, Strick is married to a woman named Jazz Monique, and together they have 10 children. Now, let me be clear. Strick ain't no old dude. Like, at the time of the investigation, he was like maybe 36 years old. His wife, Jazz Monique, she's 10 years younger than him. Now, like I said, they had 10 kids. Jazz Monique didn't have all 10. Strick had kids prior to their marriage, but she did give him a bulk of his kids. And I hate to make that sound like cattle, but he had 3 children prior to their marriage, and she birthed 7. So they have a pretty much, big family, just like Anaya did. From the outside looking in, the two of them were very happy. So, how is it that the pastor of such this great church ends up being under investigation for criminal sexual conduct and human trafficking? Don't worry, I'll tell you. On September 6, 2018, like I said, while Donovan is sitting in the Kalamazoo County Jail waiting for trial, the Michigan Police Department have had detectives inside of Strick's house for hours and they're just taking out all of this evidence. Now, according to the investigators, between 2015 and 2018, Strick had paid multiple teenage boys to have sex with his wife Jasmine while he was watching. And of course, Strick is denying the allegations and he's just so shocked and appalled that, this could be brought on him. This is just an attempt to discredit the church and the NAACP and myself as a black leader, he, tells reporters. But was it? I mean, was it though? Now, investigators have been building a case on him for months, okay? It was said that Strick and his wife used their positions in the church and in the Kalamazoo public school system to persuade four teenage boys, four, into having sex. See, Jasmine, she worked as a paraprofessional at Phoenix Alternative High School from August 2013 through September 2018. And then Strick, he worked as a paraprofessional at the Alternative Middle School from 2013 to 2015. So while Jasminique was working there, there was this one teenage boy that came forward and he said that, Strick came to him and introduced him to Jasminique. And as they were talking and everything, Strick was like, hey, if I give you $50, could you send me some naked pictures of yourself? And on another occasion, Strick goes to him and he's like, listen, I want you to fuck my wife at the house and I'm going to sit back and watch. Like, what? What kind of? That is the nasty. Let me. I can't even. I can't even formulate a sentence because I'm like, you want to watch your wife not only have sex with somebody else, but a child. Ill. Anyway, now, like I said, they both work at alternative schools, which means that the children aren't they necessarily haven't had the best experience in public school. Many kids are in alternative schools for different reasons, either because they're teen parents or they have behavioral problems, and the public school system is just done with them. The alternative school is where they're supposed to be getting a second chance, but their second chance is getting fucked up by some horny ass pastor that wants to see kids having sex with his wife. And what do you know? Jasminique, she resigned from her position the day before the search warrant was issued for her family's home. So the victims that came forward, they were as young as 14 at the time that the encounters happened. Like, actually, they were all under the age of 17. Now, there were actually five different victims, but one just did not want to get on the stand. And of course, it's safe to say that this happened on more than one occasion. Like, it wasn't just okay, I'm going to go to this person one time, we're going to do this, and then boom, it's done. Like, no, this was continuous. So while Strick is being investigated, remember, he's also dealing with the police because of Aniya's disappearance. Like, this is not looking good for your boy at all. He is constantly being watched. Now, when the accusations come to light and all of this evidence is pulled from his crib, he's telling everybody, hey, these allegations are 100% false. There's like 40 or 50 young people who've been in and out of my house. Dude, that just does not sound positive in any way. And, he goes on to say that when he finds out about all the allegations, he's like, well, I'm not afraid to talk about any of my activities with adolescents. My home is a safe haven for kids in the neighborhood. It's just really unfortunate that your whole life can be destroyed by things you can't respond to. Oh, you can respond to them, bruh. But if you respond, we know it's a lie because what? Dude, they got mountains of evidence on you. They've been investigating you for months. Several victims have come forward. Fuck you mean? So the prosecutor, attorney Jeff Getting, has all of this evidence and they're, trying to decide if they're going to go ahead and proceed with charges against Strick and his wife, Jasmine. Now, Mike Hill, he's Strick's attorney. He's ready. He's like, look, I hope prosecution is smart and decides not to go through with this, but if they do, we're ready to defend. From my client's perspective, this has been a long investigation and he's ready to put it behind him. If they charge, we're looking forward to pleading not guilty and vigorously defending our client. And Jasmonique, she had a different attorney, Don Sapanos, but he pretty much mirrored the same sentiment that Mike Hill did. This man is facing 11 felony charges, including 2 counts of third-degree criminal sexual conduct on a student. But this isn't the first time that Strick had been in trouble for something like this. He only worked in the Kalamazoo public schools for 2 years because he had to resign in October of 2015 when he was charged with sexually assaulting a 15-year-old and trafficking a minor. One of the boys who was in the investigation stated that he gave him $200 to have sex with Jasmonique in his home. And because of that, they kept, a close eye on Strick. And it didn't help when he was put into the spotlight again after the whole Aniya situation. So all of these kids are being paid money to have sex with Strick's wife by members of the school system that are supposed to, be there to help. Like, you're supposed to be guiding these kids, and then instead you're guiding them to the bedroom. Like, the school system is so fucked up, and this happens way more than we think. Like, I know as a high school student I had the biggest crush on one of the teachers at my school. Like, he wasn't my teacher, but baby was fine. Okay, baby was like, I was trying so hard to get in his class just so I could be, closer to him. And ironically, he told me my senior year, that he was feeling me. Like, I was over 18, but I was still, I hadn't graduated high school yet. And I couldn't wait till I graduated. Like, I can't get too much into that. I'm sorry. But, it happens a lot. Hell, I just read a story about a teacher that went viral. I think her name was Miss Williams. She was a cheerleading coach and all of that. I remember seeing her TikToks. She went viral in like 2020. Now she's being charged with sexual assault of a student. Like, damn, can y'all wait until graduation like I did? Oh, let me not tell on myself. Bruh, ain't no student worth you losing your job or your pension or hell being locked up for it. But I guess Jasmine and Strick didn't think they would get caught. I don't know. Now, when I was looking at the court documents, there was one thing that stood out to me where I'm thinking, this fool is bold as hell. So Strick resigned October 7th, 2015, and in his resignation letter, he actually named 7 students whom he hoped to mentor going forward. Nigga, what? Are you crazy? Your ass is under investigation and just got charged with sexual misconduct. You had to quit your job, but now you want to turn around and say, hey, let me get 7 more students to mentor. What brand of crack are you smoking? He really thought that somebody was going to take him serious and say, oh, okay, yeah, you're under investigation for this, but hey, we'll give you 7 more kids. Like, that was real specific too. You named 7 kids that you wanted to continue to mentor, and you don't think that that seems crazy? Now, with Strick being, in the media and getting all of this public scrutiny, I guess, the church leaders at Second Baptist Church, they're like, you know what? This dude is starting to become bad business, and we don't need that here. We gotta get rid of him. So after almost 8 years of him being pastor at the church, they voted him out. He was removed as lead pastor, and a few weeks after that, in August 2020, the prosecution decides, let's go ahead and proceed with filing charges. Jasmonique, she's charged with 8 felony counts related to child sexual assault and human trafficking of a minor, and Strick, he already had his 11 charges. The prosecutor said she, as well as Strick, both had relationships with the schools as well. I can't get into the specifics about the allegations, but I think it's natural to draw that link between the school and the code defendants in this case. The Kalamazoo public school system, they provided a statement and they're like, oh, Kalamazoo public schools at most concern is the safety and well being of our students. All employees and volunteers must pass a background check before working with students. We strive to have trusted adults in our schools so students can ask for assistance about any matters of concern. When there is an allegation about an employee, we investigate it thoroughly and, when it is appropriate, involve law enforcement. Inappropriate conduct by our employees is not tolerated. Basically, Kalamazoo Public School said, listen, when they were working here, they didn't have nothing on their background that made us feel like they were a danger or a threat to the students. They were clean, so we ain't had no problems. Keep our names out of it. Like, they made it clear it was not their fault. Now, Strick had a lot to lose. If he was convicted, he was facing a penalty of 15 years on each of the first four charges, plus an additional 20 years on each of the other seven charges. As the investigation continues and more evidence is coming up, on January 14th, 2021, they go ahead and they issue an arrest warrant for Jasmonique. Throughout the entire investigation, things continue to happen that kind of are just like a bit odd. For example, Mike Hill, who is Strick's attorney, he filed a motion to withdraw from the case, stating that his retainer was well past exhausted. And, he's like, listen, my law firm is unable to try a case of this magnitude without the necessary funds to do so. Strick and his wife, they were supposed to go to trial December 1st, 2020, but because of this motion, it postponed their trial. And the same judge that presided over Donovan Lewis's case, Judge Bridenstine, was the judge over this case as well. Like, did they not have any other judges in Kalamazoo? Anyway, but he granted the motion. Strick was upset because he's the only one that's providing for his family, and they're in the middle of a pandemic. He ends up with a court appointed attorney, and Strick is trying to go for a new argument. He tells everybody, listen, Mike Hill, my previous attorney, he never gave me an opportunity to review discovery or evidence that prosecutors are going to present at trial, so we need a new date. And just when you think things couldn't get any more peculiar, Strick gets accused of assaulting one of the deacons at Second Baptist Church in December 2019. Now, this was before he was removed as lead pastor. Apparently, there was a situation where he and other individuals were at the church, and Strick claimed that one of the deacons called him a faggot and spit in his mouth. And Strick was like, this dude was way too close to my face, and when he spit in my mouth, it was on. It was just a reaction, and I shoved him, and he ended up falling backwards through a door inside of the church and fell onto the ground. But the deacon had a different story. He told the cops that he went to Strick's office to look for his wife, and that when he tried to leave, the deacon said, oh, well, Strick came at me and pushed me, and I fell hard enough that I had to go to the emergency room. So Strick got charged with misdemeanor assault and battery in February 2020, but they ended up dismissing it due to the inconsistencies. Ooh, if only all the trials were that simple. Jasmonique, she is very much pregnant, awaiting trial with her and Strick's sixth child. And suddenly, all of her charges get dismissed because one of the witnesses who was assaulted had trouble remembering specific details, like the days that the alleged sexual encounters occurred. He knew that it happened, but he just couldn't remember when specifically. But, he made it very clear, I can remember because it happened to me. Something traumatic happens to you, you can remember. I get that. As a victim of child molestation and, later in my adult life as a victim of rape, I know what happened to me. I still have those images burned in my head, and I spent years in therapy trying to forget what happened to me and trying to heal from what happened to me so I can understand where the young man is coming from. Can I say the exact day and time? No, because as time goes on, you kind of black that out of your memory, like it's always there, but you don't necessarily want to have those specific details. And it may not be that way for everybody, but like I said, I just know how it was for me, so I understand where he's coming from. After her charges were dismissed, the prosecution felt like, all right, we good. It was too hard to prove Jasmine, but we got a lot on Strick. So they focused on him. And Strick, he ends up deciding, listen, I'm tired of this. It's been 4 years. Like, I'm not going to have the same outcome as my wife. So he decides to plead guilty. In August 2022, the prosecution reached a plea deal to where Strick would plead guilty to one count and the other 10 counts against him would be dismissed. He had gotten Mike Hill back as his attorney, and as part of the plea deal, Strick didn't have to register as a sex offender or be placed on probation after he was released from jail. Now, the court scheduled his sentencing hearing for October 31st, 2022. But before that happens, tragedy struck. On September 21st, 2022, Strick's son, Isaiah Javar Strickland, who was a defensive back for Raleigh High School, died in a tragic car accident. He was only 15 years old at the time of his death. Like, that was so sad when I read about it. Like, despite what the hell pastor had going on, no parent should lose a child like that, especially so young. Naturally, the judge is empathetic and they push his sentencing to a later date of December. But oddly enough, tragedy struck again. Thanksgiving Day of 2022, Strick and his family are back in his hometown of Mississippi and his house burns down. So at this point, the judge, while empathetic, he's like, listen, we got to do this sentencing. It's got to take place. You can't just keep prolonging it. The pandemic had already slowed down and society was getting back to normalcy. So they had to continue. On January 30th, 2023, Strick stood before Judge Bridenstine, remember, the same judge that was over Donovan's case, and he was sentenced to 1 year of jail time at the Kalamazoo County Jail on one felony count of facilitation of travel services for purposes of prostitution. They allow Strick to speak, and in true Strick fashion, he completely pulls some shit out of his ass. He stands before the court and he gives this grand speech. He's standing before everybody and looking out at everybody, and he says, this was a witch hunt and a lynching from the beginning. I am not without fault, but I am not guilty of what I'm accused of. I want to make the acknowledgement that I'm not here today to be pious and to pretend that I'm innocent and without fault. However, I'm not guilty of what I was accused of. I'm glad that the 10 most heinous charges were dismissed. I'm going to take the time that I'm away to write. I'm going to take the time that I'm away to prepare myself to represent this issue. I'm not done with Kalamazoo, and I certainly don't fear them. And he goes on to continue in this 12-minute statement, damn near sermon, where he maintains his innocence. And then he blames the prosecutors for not protecting the victims that he was accused of harming. Sir, that is the dumbest shit I have ever heard in my life. He actually tells prosecutors, how is this justice for the victims? 1 year, no registry, no probation. How is this justice for anyone involved? What? Okay. Let me make sure I got this right. Ooh, I need a drink for this one because you get a whole plea deal that basically protects you after you have been accused and charged with 11 counts of sexual misconduct, of sexual assault on a child, of prostitution, and pretty much human trafficking. You get a plea deal that basically protects you and keeps you from getting your booty snatched in prison every night or worse, and then you turn around and try to flip it and say, oh, how is this justice for the victims? What? What is your reason, sir?
And what was the reason?
Luckily, the prosecution wasn't falling for it. They knew that this dude was pretty much out for himself from jump. He had shown it throughout the entire case. He had shown it throughout, the investigation. He just cared about himself. Even with his little speeches and all of that, he didn't care about those victims. He cared about himself. And that's the sad part, is that prosecutors actually hoped that, the plea deal would force him to consider his behavior and show some remorse. But he didn't, because he was out for himself. Now, he ended up going to jail the day that he was convicted. He got credit for the one day that he was in jail. He had to serve a year in Kalamazoo County Jail as of January 30th, 2023. So that means he'll actually be getting out January 30th of this year. So I was on social media and found both he and his wife's Facebook pages. His wife, Jasminique, her Facebook shows her and her kids a lot and her dedication to Isaiah, which is, really sweet. Her bio says, wife and mother of 10 children, 9 living, 2 bonus, and 7 I gave birth to. I love them unconditionally. She pretty much makes no mention of her husband, but there's still pictures of the two of them, of course. I'm really hoping that with him being gone, she snaps out of it or whatever. Like, you got the charges dismissed by the grace of God. They say God take care of babies and fools. By the grace of God, you were taken care of, honey. I'm really hoping that you get your life together and say, okay, you know what? That was some stupid shit. I'm lucky. Let me get my shit together. I personally don't see the hype with Strick for all of this. Like, just because you high yellow and all of that don't mean you cute, bruh. But okay, everybody acts like he is the best thing since creation. Y'all can have it. But I went to his Facebook page, and he has a different Facebook name than his actual name, which, I mean, I can understand, because, bruh, your name is Strick Javar. It sounds like some type of STD. You've got Strick Javar. Like, I'm sorry. Anyway, I went to his Facebook page, and he's posted a lot about his kids. Um, he posted about his wife and stuff. This was, of course, prior to his incarceration, because he's posted nothing since then. But his page really is focused on his wife and kids. And you know what? Honestly, that kind of got me to wondering, like, all right, I know this is kind of coming from left field, but with him doing all of this with these teenage boys, it kind of made me wonder, like, was he doing this to his own kids? Like, was his sick, twisted mind somehow doing this to his own children? Because a lot of times those are the first victims, and they don't come forward. And I hate to have that thought process, but it's sad because it happens, and I don't know, with this guy, I can't call it. Like I said, he'll be released from jail January 30th of this year. And I can only hope that when he gets out, he stays the hell away from kids. Like, you got very lucky, dude. You didn't have to register as a sex offender or have any probation. I am praying that there's some type of restraining orders or something against these kids. I am praying that nobody hires him. Like, you are so fucking lucky, because you can just pick up like nothing ever happened, get a regular job and all of that. Like, yeah, when people Google your name, they're going to see what happened. They're going to see about the investigation. They're going to see that you did a year's time. But at the end of the day, you don't have to register. So you could be out amongst kids. Like, that's the crazy thing to me. Honestly, it seems like he ain't got the sense God gave a good tick, so I'm pretty sure he gonna end up in trouble again some kind of way, and he might not be so lucky next time. People like him, they say a leopard never changes his spots. Whew, this was a lot, y'all. This one almost took me out. That is all for this week's episode of The Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast. Be sure to follow the show on the following: Instagram and TikTok at Infamous One Podcast. That's a number one, by the way, not spelled out. And you can leave a review there. On X at Infamous One Pod, where you can also leave a review. On Facebook, you can send a friend request to the Infamous Ones or join the private discussion group, the Infamous Ones discussion group. You will need to answer questions to get in, people. It's some folks still pending because they're not answering these questions, and your asses is still sitting there where you shall stay until you answer. Okay? Oh, and did I mention leave a review? The show streams on multiple streaming services like Spotify, of course, Odyssey, Apple Podcast, yay, iHeartRadio, and so on and so on. So leave a review. It only takes a few seconds, people. Oh, and speaking of reviews, got a couple here. So there's one from Anitria from last week's episode on Alfred Bouget, and it says, "Not guilty. There was absolutely no evidence. I hope his daughter can eventually get him exonerated when all the evidence can be heard. This was a heartbreaking case. I also like what was the reason." Thank you, darling. I like it too. Although I must say I am kind of keen to the whole, you done fucked up. But I agree. I think it would be great, even though Alfred was executed. I think that it would be good to have him exonerated because I know it'll give his family some peace, especially his daughter Bethany, because like she be fighting tooth and nail. She's been fighting tooth and nail rather. And I think it will really give her that peace that she needs. So got another one here. This one is from Malika, and it says, "This story has a lot of twists and turns, sadly. I'm looking forward to more of these episodes. And I plan to keep giving y'all these episodes trust. If you have a case you want to hear more on that you feel has been ignored in the Black community, or if you want to leave a review there as well, send an email to infamous1pod@gmail.com. That's infamous, pod@gmail.com. And please, people, share, share, share. This podcast has really gotten a lot of streams the last few weeks and even got a shout out on IG. Ow. So let's keep that going. Please know I am working on some exclusive things for my Infamous Ones, and it's coming sooner than you think, okay? I'm talking videos, extra snippets for the subscribers, and a whole lot more. And might be working on some merch, y'all. So, stay tuned. Until then, y'all know what it is. I'm your girl Kay. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll holla at y'all next week. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast hosted by Kay. Be sure to like and comment on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe so that you never miss an episode.